Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, John Clark, Dave Patterson, and Graham Noble. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. RFK Jr., the man that terrifies the bought and paid for allies of Big Pharma and poisonous foods, has just submitted a 69-page breakout report in his first 100 days as the health guru for America. And it has hit the sweet spot, some might say. When we say prevention and not just treat symptoms, that's not Big Pharma and fake food goals. And that's why childhood chronic diseases, including cancer, mental health disorders, allergies, diabetes, and neurological conditions, are rising as visibly as the body weights of morbidly obese 5-year-olds.
Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator on Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court. By some estimates, 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything because it was radioactive. They knew you couldn't get it by Congress.
RFK Jr. can hold his own for sure. Let's discuss. John Clark.
Well, I think you've hit upon it. You mentioned prevention, but also, as the clip showed, transparency. Bobby Kennedy campaigned on the issue of regulatory capture, and that's contained in the report, a very detailed analysis. There is also regulatory capture in the big food industry, though, as he points out, more prominently in Big Pharma. But politically and policy-wise, the MAHA report was really quite fascinating because it doesn't propose radical changes other than in sort of a radical transparency with credible scientific studies to more fully look at the problem and to fully look at the problem. That is, it's holistic. It wasn't just about pharmaceuticals or SSRIs in particular, the increase in anxiety, depression, mental health issues. It also talked about food quality, and whole foods were very much emphasized. It talked about exercise. It talked about social media and how that's damaging children's minds and contributing. All of these are factors combined. It even talks about getting kids out in nature more. And so it was a very powerful report, and it was, largely cabinet wide. It had a lot of voices in there. And now who could ever disagree with that? And what's interesting about that is that there are some who are going to oppose even lowering prescription drug prices, as Bernie Sanders was criticizing it, that even though he's been pushing for that for years. This is kind of similar. This should be a positive that all Americans embrace. But something else about this report that maybe was a little behind the scenes is that there isn't just the usual bipartisan division between Republicans and Democrats. There's actually a division that you don't really see with Big Pharma in big food, and that's between conventional agriculture and organic or regenerative agriculture. And they had to really navigate that political minefield as well. Big Pharma is kind of narrow. Big food includes a lot of farmers and ranchers who have huge political voices and get very upset if they feel their livelihood is threatened by an attack on their beloved pesticides. So the report kind of steered a middle ground. Yes, the sweet spot is that it kind of annoyed both sides for not going far enough. And in anticipation of the report, it was already being criticized by a lot of pesticide groups and the big chemical industry. So I think it really set the stage to who could argue with doing the investigatory work, and maybe we pare back some amounts of pesticides and keep pesticides down for children's food and in school lunches, things that are manageable without it being an all or nothing affair. And that's why I think MAHA is here to stay. I think this administration is delivering on its campaign promises to actually make America healthier again.
I know you're a livestock farmer, John. I'm a dirt farmer, crop farmer, and the thing I really picked up on is the offer of choice. We have the choice to do what we want to do with how we want to raise our food around here. And I'm not, we're not big farmers. We're small family farmers. And so we make those choices depending on the market here locally, not so much globally. But anyway, I enjoyed the report, and I'm glad you were here to report on that. But most of us on panel here are of a certain age where nobody was really looking out for us. So I want to talk to Andrew. Andrew has 2 young children, and genetics, bad food, vaccinations. Andrew, being a parent, has all the thrills of a roller coaster without a seatbelt. I mean, how does MAHA land in your world? I mean, are you seeing what you would like to see improved?
Well, first, I like to declare that I have award-winning genes, so I think our kids will be fine on the genetic.
Yeah, whatever. Let's not declare that. That's provable wrong. Let's go.
All right, so on the food front, I mean, it's very expensive. If you want to eat well, I've interviewed John about this on Swamponomics TV, and if you want to eat well, it's very expensive. But we're making the sacrifices, and we're serving our kids organic fruits and vegetables. We try to give them top quality meat. We don't give them crap like McDonald's or Dunkaroos or the Lunchables. If you go to my Swamponomics TV episode with John, I go through a long list of the Lunchables and all the garbage that's in that food, and that's the crap. That's the type of stuff that a lot of low income people, or even, I'm gonna say everybody, every busy parent will eventually came and give their kid that crap.
Exactly.
Our kids exercise, they take their vitamins, they get lots of vitamin D from the sun. Every time it's sunny, we try to go outside. So I would say that we were MAHA before it was cool. Okay, we were MAHA before all you youngins on there. But I will say one thing though. A few shows ago, I complained about the influenza vaccine, and I was proven correct. There was a study that came out, and it said that this year's influenza vaccine had a negative 27% efficacy rate. And that's exactly what I suspected, because our kids had they had the flu, they had the norovirus they had that, they had colds after colds after colds, and nothing seemed to be work. Nothing seemed to work at all. So if I have no problem with vaccinations, I do have a problem with this influenza vaccine because it never seems to work, at least in our household's case. So, but overall, yes, I would say we were MAHA before it was cool, and I think we're doing a good job as parents.
Well, I think you are too. I will pat your shoulder as well in the hallway later. Okay, Graham. You know what? RFK, Bobby's something else. And I want to circle back around, not get too lost here in Andrew's kids, but he takes to task anyone who has any kind of clue or no clue on the Hill, and he comes prepared. How's he doing with all these people? Is he changing minds on the Hill?
I would like to think so, of course. And I believe probably he is, because so much of what he says, it's like, it's kind of coming back to one of the remarks John made there is how can you not, how can you disagree with this? How can you argue against this wish to, restrict the influence of the pharmaceutical companies on us, and also make us eat healthier food. And, I'm not going to get into my personal habits, but a few years ago, I started making a concerted effort to eat more healthily and eat more organic foods. And in fact, I even feed my dog like the best human grade dog food you can get,
Me too.
And, so I try, but here's the thing about RFK Jr. I don't agree with all of his politics. I'm 100% behind him on the whole MAHA thing, 100%. Outside of that, I don't agree with all his politics. But nevertheless, when he goes in front of a congressional hearing, you can bet that most of the time he's the smartest man in the room.
Yeah.
And just most recently, May 24th, he was in front of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor and Pensions, and they were talking about the fiscal year 2026 budget for the Health and Human Services Department. And, Kennedy's a lot more, let's say he's less aggressive than, say, Marco Rubio or even Scott Besson. They've been in front of these committees and they've just torn people a new one. Kirsten Noem as well. She goes there. And I love that stuff. Now Kennedy's a little more polite, but he had an exchange with Bernie Sanders where, of course, Bernie hits all the normal, left wing talking points. He wanted to question Kennedy on Why is the CBO estimating that the cuts to Medicare are going to make throw something like 13 million Americans off of their health insurance? And and Kennedy was like, well, I can start, and he was about to go there. He said, I've got a list. He said, I've got a list of the things that are being cut, and and I can tell you. And then of course Bernie's like, oh, I don't have time for this. It's like, well, and so Robert Kennedy said, well, you asked me the question. I'm ready to provide you with the answer. And but of course Bernie doesn't want the answers. He doesn't want anyone to
be on the record that he was a doofus. So
yeah, and then the other thing he went on, of course, was the taxes. He was like, well, the tax cuts for billionaires, and I thought Kennedy came out with a great remark. He said, well, look, Senator, he said, what we're doing is we're cutting taxes out for tips and for overtime. He said, how many billionaires do you know get tips and work overtime? So I thought that was kind of cool.
Who was the congresswoman that Kennedy said that was, what have you done for 50 years? You're complicit in all this. Who was that gal? She was a little bit taken aback.
I'm not sure who that was, but I mean, let's face it, Kennedy could...
Pretty much they all are. Both sides of the aisle have been complicit in this for too many years.
He could ask that question of probably about... at least out of the entire Congress, both chambers.
Exactly.
Probably ask that question of at least about 100 of them.
All right. Hey, Dave, are we looking at a major success or just more roadblocks? I mean, the truth is coming out, and I think it's giving people choice. And Americans like choice. If they want to go eat something stupid, they can eat something stupid. But where are we going with this? Are we getting somewhere, or are we just spinning our wheels?
Well, I think the fact that there's a credible study, albeit done in 3 months, it's a win for Americans' health. When you see statistics like over 40% of U.S. children, which amounts to approximately 29 million out of 73 million children that are under the age of 17, have at least one chronic health condition, such as asthma, allergies, obesity, autoimmune diseases, and behavioral disorders. Well, over-medication, I think, is a key driver, and it raises this issue. And it's troubling. But it goes to an equally problematic situation, and that is that, a lot of the shoot from the hip diagnoses of behavioral issues, for example, autism and ADHD, they have widened the aperture for the diagnosis to the point where if a kid gets off his bicycle on the wrong side, he's ADHD. Well, I think that what has to happen is that they have to go back and take a look at some of these diagnostic windows to determine whether or not they haven't opened the aperture just too far. And so, I think that it's going to open the door to a lot of rigorous studies, and that's a good news story. And the commission is going to come up with, in about 80 days, a strategy to address these problems. And I think that's also a good thing. So overall, I'd call it a win.
Nice. Okay. Well, you know what? America is watching as Trump and Kennedy find much needed common ground. Could be there's a huge success on the horizon for all of America. Thanks for watching. And for goodness sake, read the labels, put the poison down, and tune in next week and tell us how you're feeling. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.